Have you ever been on a road trip and taken a wrong turn? Or hit unexpected construction? Felt that little spike of anxiety that says, ooh, I have messed up. Even when you know intellectually that detours happen, there's something in us that interprets a change in the route as a problem. I want to talk about that today because I think it's one of the quieter but more powerful things that stops you from moving confidently towards your horizon. Here's what I've learned. Changing your route is not the same as abandoning your destination. When life shifts, when a launch doesn't land, when a season changes unexpectedly, when a plan you were certain about suddenly doesn't fit, it can feel like you've lost your way. But most of the time, what's actually happening is that your map is updating. The destination is still there. The road there just looks a little different than what you thought. I think about this in terms of detours versus derailments. A detour is a change in route. It adds some distance, maybe some unexpected scenery, but you're still heading somewhere meaningful. A derailment is something completely different. That's when you lose your horizon entirely, when the noise of what's not working drowns out the signal of where you're trying to go. The difference isn't usually in what happened, it's in how you interpret it. When something doesn't go as planned, the question that serves you most isn't, what went wrong? It's, what does this tell me about the road ahead, and how do I adjust the route without losing my destination? That is flexible navigation in action. I've had to practice this myself, and most recently, it showed up in writing my book. I had completed my Horizon Navigation Framework last year, so when the idea of writing a book came up, it just seemed to make sense that the book would be about the framework. I mean, after all, I've seen plenty of other coaches and consultants do exactly that. So that was my plan. I started writing. Then I met with my mentor, who reviewed the draft. There was a single sentence in the beginning, just one line, that mentioned I had spent the early part of my career teaching kids with visual impairments. And he keyed in on that. He felt strongly that the book was about that. He had lots of ideas, and I was honestly a little overwhelmed. We got off the call, and I felt like it had been a derailment, like my destination was changing. But here's what happened when I sat with it. The destination hadn't changed at all. I was still wanting to write a book. What changed was what the book was about. My mentor had simply handed me a detour, and it turned out to be a better road. Once I started thinking about how much those years of teaching had actually shaped my framework, how much of what I believe about navigation, about designing environments that meet people where they are, once I saw all of that, I realized I could tell the story of the framework through those experiences. The lessons came first, the framework followed. I think a lot of you know exactly what that moment feels like. When something shifts and your first instinct is to interpret it as failure. It wasn't. The map was just updating. And that, I think, is worth sitting with. Your horizon has room for detours. In fact, some of the most important parts of any journey happen on the roads you didn't plan to take. So here's your reflection for this week. Where in your life or business has the route recently shifted, or perhaps it needs to? And can you separate the route change from the destination? What would it look like to adjust the map without losing sight of where you're headed? You don't have to get the route perfect. You just have to keep the horizon in view. See you next week.